To read Saying What We Mean and A Process Model, these two final works of Gendlin, is to encounter a mature scholar of both psychology and philosophy, and a person who could comfortably and confidently see the importance of his model for almost every arena of human existence. Perhaps many of you are like me. When I read Gendlin, I find his ideas immediately working on the problems that vex me, both in terms of the minutiae of my everyday experience and the massive, complex problems that plague our world. These voices rightly redirect our gaze to the unique temporality of my embodied being in the world, of the ever converging layers of history that are cascading into every moment, every effort to speak, every choice. This is what Gendlin guides us to think about. I find in the hermeneutic tradition an effort to think with expansiveness and precision about the incredibly complex milieu in which thinking and speaking and acting take place. This tradition, when it is at its best, operates with profound humility and openness to novelty and surprise. So for today, using a tangible example from my spouse's work in obstetric care as a labor and delivery nurse, and from my own work in the ethical philosophy of Emmanuel Levinas, I want to play at the boundary between phenomenology, hermeneutics, and ethics. My comments today move toward a central question about the work of Gendlin, and it coincides with something that comes to mind as I read the philosophers Maurice Merleau-Ponty and Hans-Georg Gadamer. Does phenomenology only deal in understanding? Might we make other discoveries from rigorous analysis of embodied there being? I'm going to make the case for a responsibility-laden approach to phenomenology, and my presentation today comes in three parts. First of all, I want to make the case through an analysis of causation, through an analysis of language, especially how words fail, and then finally through an analysis of touch. Ultimately, I argue in all three cases for a Gendlin-inspired implication in the implicit, an obligation in the oppressive order, a responsibility in the responsive order. For my first section, causation and carrying forward. In recognition of a diverse audience at this symposium, I've decided to fasten my deliberations to a particular and practical example. As at the same time, I've attempted to shift a lot of my quotations and philosophical terminology into my footnotes to avoid falling into philosophical jargon in my prose. In what follows, I explore the implications of Gendlin's responsive order in light of the urgent problem of maternal mortality and obstetric safety. I highlight this situation in order to underscore that what we learn in an analysis of the responsive order arrives as both information and obligation, the latter, I believe, more primary than the former. In the labor and delivery room, nurses and doctors, midwives, and anesthesiologists gather around the body of a person giving birth. The importance in that moment of precision is abundant. The instruments and tools of assessment are finely tuned. The practitioners are trained and experienced and nuanced in their understanding of the human body and the nearly infinite things that can go right or wrong in the harrowing moments of delivering a new human from the body of the birth giver. Labs are carefully analyzed, blood pressure monitored, heart rates tracked of both the mother and the infant, or infants in the case of multiples. Nurses watch for slight changes in color, in breathing, in posture, in positioning, any of which could indicate a transition into dangerous territory for either the one giving or receiving birth. And yet, despite spending more money on the science of these harrowing moments than any country in history, And despite the earnest attention to the precise science and medicine, Americans are dying of childbearing related causes at an increasing and alarming rate. While maternal mortality rates drop precipitously around the world, thanks to global advances in medicine and culture, etc., the reverse is actually true in the United States. America is the only industrialized country in which maternal mortality is at a rise. I'm just getting started, by the way, on the complexity of this problem. Though high rates of maternal mortality put all pregnant people at increased risk in the United States, racial inequality makes the problem heartbreakingly worse. Black and Indigenous women in particular in the US have rates of maternal mortality a staggering 3 to 5 times higher than white women. I'm a philosopher. I'm not an obstetrician or a nurse. And I doubt you turned into today's event expecting to hear about maternal mortality. Still, my spouse, her name is Misha, is a labor and delivery nurse and a nurse manager. And I watch as she carries the burden of this dire situation with her everywhere. Something is happening in the labor and delivery room, which world-class ultrasound machines and world-renowned surgeons cannot seem to stop or even slow down. So I was reading Gendlin's process model and sitting right next to Misha as she worked through the latest literature in obstetric safety. And I was struck by the importance of this alignment. The American medical system is largely built on the interpretation of causation that Gendlin attacks relentlessly in his work. He claims that in the West, in particular, we are trained to, quote, attribute causality to separate individuals, unquote, and to work tirelessly to find individual explanations for any given event that takes place. When something goes wrong in a medical procedure, it is imperative then to find the singular causal source. Who drew the wrong medicine? Who failed to see a key indicator? Who didn't intervene when it was needed? This pressure to establish singular causal origins is driven by a range of factors, from deep philosophical resonances that we can trace back to Aristotle, and also the modern need for litigation to find somebody at fault for the sake of monetary reimbursement. Obstetrics represent the most litigated arena in American medicine. Every time a pregnant person dies, there's a mad scramble to find out what that singular cause might be, the person who committed malpractice, the individual cause. Gendlin encourages a phenomenological model that assumes an original inter-affecting. The urgency to assign singular blame quickly, immediately paves over the implicit here, obscuring the delicate ways that events come to pass, and of course, the ways we might intervene in the delicacy of that causation. He teaches a process called focusing, which attends to the often ignored, precise, and implicit processes at work in any event. For Gendlin, the individualistic thinking that dominates Western society inclines us to see events not just simplistically, but incorrectly. For him, the complexity of causation is better framed as a nuanced philosophy of time that he sometimes calls carrying forward. My appreciation for Gendlin's work grows every time I apply such thinking to the confounding problems of our day, from medicine to politics to economics to systemic racism. We are not billiard balls exchanging energy and collisions that could be scripted by causal laws. This is in fact what Pierre-Simon Laplace thought, and Gendlin enjoys pointing out just how wrong he was.